Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Cecilia. So thank you for being here to come here at La Centrale to transform La Centrale. And so this is Esther.
Hello.
So we are very happy. Well, I would say I'm very happy to be here, but I'm sure Esther
Of
agrees
course.
with me. And that will be the discussion to learn a little bit more about the project, about what happened. And during the 45 minutes, we'll talk about different level of questions. That will be the first about the project, how it came to be. The second part will be more about Esther art practice, about like aesthetic art practice, and then we'll actually slide into the activism aspect of her work. So like this, you will learn a little bit more. And sometimes I think Esther will ask questions to me, so I'm more the person talking right now, but sometimes there will be like description. She will ask me questions as the curator of the show. So here we go, Esther.
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome. So Esther, hi, and so I'm sure we are very happy for this like realization of this exhibition. But we have to come back to the beginning, and so I think people who may know how the project actually came to be. What are the seeds that lead you to do the project?
Yeah. Well, I've been in art school since like I was 12. But I like in high school I was in visual arts, and then I went to Dawson in visual arts, and then I finally graduated from Concordia in painting and drawing specifically because I knew that's what I wanted to do. Last year I graduated, and so I felt like I had a teacher of mine that told me like you should really use this year to just paint and just make work, and that's what I focused on. And I felt like okay, I feel ready to have my own like solo exhibition because I had done a lot of group exhibitions, and by the end of like 2018, beginning of 2019, that's when I felt like I found my style and I knew what I wanted to do. And so, but really, by the end of 2019, that's when I really understood my purpose in visual arts making.
That's your purpose. Okay. Whoa. About you've been saying about 2019. You've been like focusing about your work. Maybe we can start on how we met. Actually,
Yes, of course.
so do you want me to say it?
You can start.
Yeah. Okay. So in 2019, actually, I was at Dawson University, college. It's like Cégep, but it's like a university for me too. And I'm from France, so the social Cégep is like very blurry for me. So sorry for that. So let's go back to Dawson. And I was I was doing an exhibition about actually three other artists that's called Reclaiming My Place there. And there was a little section about the exhibition but made by students there, and one of them was Esther. So and like she has a really nice personality and really driven, like she knew what she wanted to do, and so we keep in touch like that. And some months like in November 2020, so during you were creating your work, you contacted me and said, hey Cecilia, do you remember me? And
Exactly. So to continue the story, so when I felt like I was ready to have my own solo exhibition, I contacted an artist, a friend of mine, Stanley Février, and I was letting him know like, oh, I need like a curator, because I can't do this all alone. And he kind of gave me a list of people, and like she was on the first list, and like the first person on the list, and I was like, oh, I know her, so that's perfect. And so like I contacted her, and I was aware of how she kind of transformed the space and how she wanted to, like she was kind of like she didn't like the white cube because the previous exhibition she had created was like with yellow walls. Yeah, so I remembered that, and I was like, oh, that's different. I didn't go to like many exhibitions with like different colored walls. Usually it's like all white. So I contacted her, and she's like, okay, well, let's jump on a Zoom call and tell me about your project. And so I did. I was like, okay, that's what I do. I paint black women with body hair, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, yes. So that's when we kind of like decided to like work on this together, and here it is now.
Yeah, but between all this moment, the first goal and let's say the realization, could be funny to say, like I said, like the notion of white cube is like a little bit annoying for me, um, because for me it's like materialization of the world we live in. You know, like I'm really focused on the notion of like the notion of being black because of a white background. So that's why I'm trying to play with this kind of aspect in the art world and let's say the how to say that well the standard of presentation in art currently. So that's why I try to do that most of the time. And when Esther asked me to do this project, that was actually a kind of a challenge for me because usually I do collective exhibition. So sometimes I have my own ideas and ask the artists if they feed on it. But in that case, that was a for sure, and you had like your own ideas. And I was like, well, what should I do in that case? I'm not maybe needed. I don't know. So like while we've been discussing a lot, there was really this notion of looking at work and really try to see what was in common, what was the sense and the ambience in our work. And in many of your creation, for example, Lavender was a very inspiring, sorry, for the ideas. There was a lot of grass, of nature. So you love flowers and it's really present in your work. So I was like, yeah, why not doing this, you know? And so it was really, really amusing, great to talk together, to do all Zoom because it was COVID time, and to try to see how it could look like. And yeah, it's really funny to see that what we've been discussing is like taking reality in the space. Definitely. We did a good job.
Yes, very.
Well, let's try to talk about. Well, we are actually talking about the notion of maybe the notion of sisterhood because I think you kind of see like the good connection together. How can I formulate the question? Maybe
But
yeah.
I was gonna say, but like I feel like as a black artist, I really wanted like a black curator, especially that's also a woman like me, and so I felt like she could really relate with my work, and especially if it's my first one, she could really understand, and we could relate in a deeper level. And so if I were to talk about like colonialism and the impact in the beauty industry, how it really impacted the black community specifically as well, and so she would understand like how that affected her as well. And so that was a really important part as well. But also, I think our personalities really meshed well together. We were both kind of like a bit timid, but like we had big ideas, and so like it really worked perfectly.
I totally agree, and it's really funny because Esther would be like the optimist person. Me, I'm the more pessimist but optimist person, and it's kind of connection of what's going on. You know, it's just like it when it happened it was there's not so much space to propose the project, and I was like, I don't think we'll be able to do that in 2021, maybe 22, but let's try, you know. And you were like, yeah, let's go, yeah. And so we're like, okay, well, so okay, but slow down, maybe it won't work that way. And actually everything went to the good direction. So I should say too that is the compatibility and the energy together really helped out, and yeah, the chance too, and all the element of the stars, because like the Centrale said, yeah, go, like we love your project, and it was like, okay, awesome, let's go. So yeah, this is it. Maybe we can switch to the second part of the discussion. It was more to your art practice. So what we can see, if you have the occasion to see, so the place is ready to go into another world. Like we are on the Boulevard Saint Laurent, so it's like a lot of people working. But when you go here, it's like, whoa, you are in another world, like above, like there's clouds over there, so like that. So it's really the notion of escapism. So it's a really term that you love a lot, and I wanted to know why it's very important for you. And there's also the notion of Black imagination in your work, and I would like for you to talk about this a little bit more.
I think when it comes to escapism, why it's so important to me is because, like, growing up, I was really, really shy and really insecure. And so daydreaming became a way to escape. And so I would do that, like, I would be able to do that for hours to kind of, like, create characters in my brain where I feel like I'm comfortable with these people and they're not judging me. And so I was doing that for years until, like, I really got to work on my self-esteem and was able to kind of, like, bring myself back into reality and try to make, really good, strong relationships in the real world. And so escapism, I thought it was really important because oftentimes, especially as in the Black community, the type of stuff through the media, what we're fed is a lot of, like, Black trauma in a sense, like a lot of slavery type movies. And so it's like, for us, it's a type of, like, horror, the horror genre, because we feel that it's, like, so painful, to watch. And so, like, I think that it's been a bit now, a few years now that I can't even watch these types of movies anymore because it affects me, like, really, really deeply. And so escapism kind of, like, gives Black people the option to kind of discover a world where they're just being and they're not suffering necessarily, or if they are, it's something that's human, that everyone can relate with, especially when it comes to accepting your body and things like that. Everyone can, like, connect. And so that's why I feel like it's really important in my work to kind of, like, get to escape and, like, discover a world where you're reading, you're enjoying yourself, you're a person that's creative, you're your own person. And so also with, what was the other one there?
Black imagination?
Yeah, Black imagination. I think, like, I was kind of, like, inspired by, like, because I watch a lot of movies, so, like the film director, Jordan Peele, because he kind of started making movies that were, like, really, really interesting, very different. It was, like, obviously the main characters were Black, but it wasn't, like, necessarily about slavery, and we could all relate. We could all see, like, oh my gosh, something completely new, something, like, where we're just a character. It could have been anyone, but instead it was a Black character, and it wasn't always necessarily about our Blackness, but simply just a character that's living, through a storyline, And so that's why I felt like Black imagination is really important, especially when we're, as Black people, we're asking for diversity, and sometimes we're not given the right kind. Often it's more like the token Black character, or, like, the stereotype, and we all know that, like, not all Black people are like this, and we want variety, we want people. And so for me, that's why Black imagination is important, to kind of, like, bring back the aspect of just being human as a Black people, that we cry, we live all sorts of emotions, we laugh, like everyone else.
We are vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think, important to show that aspect, because there's this notion of image, as you've been saying, like the notion of horror. Even Jordan Peele, like with Get Out, there's this notion of horror movie, but in a kind of, it's really clever that he's been, like, reversing the vision of the thing, but it's still, the horror movie. But, like, with what you've been showing here is, like, something like colorful. Like during yesterday, the opening, people were like, oh man, I needed this kind of happiness, and it was refreshing. There's a notion of something else, and the fact you say escapism, there's a notion of, like, to go away something. But sometimes I see there's another aspect of escapism, it's like creation of the thing. And maybe it could be interesting to relate that to the notion of the title, really. And as the title, actually, that was your idea. That I don't know if the sound would be good because of
the noise
right now, but yeah. So I will say again, the notion of escapism is related to the notion of creation of another word. So maybe can you talk about this notion of the title, because it was your idea to call it that way?
So, growing up, I always liked to write stories. I loved to write at the time, and I thought I was going to become a cartoonist because I really loved drawing cartoons, and I really liked, I had a really big imagination. I would see objects and be like, oh, I can draw a monster and a creature, and so I had a really wild imagination, and so I felt like as I grew up, I kind of lost that aspect of myself, and and then going to school and you learn different things and you feel like you're being put in the box. And so then when I felt ready to have the solo exhibition, I wanted to create something where people would discover a world. I wanted to create a world within this world. Obviously it's imaginary, but I wanted to create it in a way as if it actually exists. And so so that's why I obviously chose the word creation, because it's all from my imagination and I'm trying to create something new. But ethereal, really, it's really dumb how that came about. But I was brainstorming a lot, and then since I'm also a body hair activist, and I was posting a lot of pictures with nature, and so someone commented oh, this is so ethereal, and I was like, what is that word, I was like, I've heard this, but I don't know what it really means. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, I fell in love with the word. I was like, this is perfect. It feels so spiritual, imaginary, and so like a fantasy world. And I was like, this is what I want. Creation of an ethereal world. And I felt like that really put everything together, everything that I wanted to talk about and I wanted people to discover. So obviously when you hear creation, you're like, okay, something's being created. I want to see what it is. And so I felt that it was also an interesting title to bring people to come and see what this artist is creating. So yeah, and with the grass as well, we both wanted it to be kind of immersive, people really enter the space and really feel as if they're going into a portal, and especially with the blue walls as well. And I thought that was really important. I felt that we really needed that, those elements as well.
And for me, I was really interested with the title because the notion of creation for solo show was really appealing. You're like, oh, so solo show is creating something. Let's see what's going on. And for sure, the word ethereal, there's a trick world too. There's real, but there's either there's this two aspect of it that was really interesting. And on Netflix, because I Netflix, a lot of movies I watch all the time, and it's really about sometimes fantasy too, and sometimes you can see ethereal noise or ethereal sound, and it's really, and I was, oh, that's nice, really good choice, So I was really into what you decide, and two. An aspect I was really I told you about that, but it's very funny that éthère in French is very close to your name. Esther. So I was like, oh man, that's so great. So let's go for that. So yeah, there's all those connections coming together. I feel there's never any hazard. So I'm just so that was perfect. I think it was perfect for that. I was taking notes while I was listening to you, and the notion of creation is really important because there is the notion of the myth that you'll be creating for this show, but you're creating that a little bit before, but you are introducing some people here. So maybe can you talk about the tribe and the language you've been created here?
Yeah, so for the tribe, well, that's a lot. I'm trying to summarize, but yeah, I thought that in 2020, I decided to kind of create a project where I'm creating this new tribe inspired by my own. I'm half Haitian, half Ivorian, and on my Ivorian side, my aunt from Ivory Coast contacted me and let me know that it was completely normal that I was this hairy. And I was like, after I became a body hair activist, like I didn't have the knowledge of all that. And so when she told me like, oh, it's completely normal, you know, on your that side of the family, like the women are very, very hairy, and like in your great grandmother's time was seen as something beautiful. And if a woman like even had a beard, she could become a chief in the tribe, and she was kind of like seen as an authority. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't she tell me this sooner? but yeah, I feel like obviously it's destiny. But when I found this knowledge, I was like, okay, I wanted to learn more. Obviously, I feel like because of my parents and everything, and because of colonialism and just a lot of history on both sides and of the family, I felt like I was kind of like not so close to my heritage. Although I had visited the country, I was really young, and Haiti was like in 2019. So, but I didn't feel like I got enough of information, but like I would get like little pieces, and I think obviously I'll discover more as I grow up. But yeah, so creating this tribe inspired by my own, and this one is called Fierté Souté, which means divine pride. And Fierté is in Creole and Souté is in Guéré. And yeah, so I wanted to kind of like put it together. Like my last name is Calixte-Béa, and Calixte is my mom's last name, which is from Haiti, and Bea is my dad's last name, who's Ivorian. And so I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's like my last name. But I feel like a lot of times when I create it, just things happen, and then this later I'm like, I guess my subconscious knew what it was doing. Yeah, so I decided to create a tribe where the women kind of are embracing their body, embracing themselves, embracing like the body hair, because I felt like, not that I was alone, but I felt like it would be really interesting, especially going back to Black imagination, to just create something new, something, because I had felt like I lost this creative side, a bit of this creative side of me, that I used to create so many stories, and I kind of like went back to, I guess, childhood state of creating, and I was like, okay, let's create something new, let's create a tribe that kind of like wear their body hair with pride, and that's also part of their identity. And that's why I really created that. And the funny story, like even before that, it was like it's a funny story, but it's like really important. But like my little cousins, one is like, well, they're 2 years apart. I think one is 5, the other was like 4 or 3 or something like that. And like they were, like the oldest one was showing me his drawings, and he was like taking himself really, really seriously, and he was looking at our reactions, and he was like afraid, and I was like, okay. But the youngest one, he was like showing me his drawings, and he kept laughing, and he thought it was hilarious. And then he showed me like, it was there was one particular drawing, it was like just brown circles with a bunch of colorful lines, and I was like, what is that? He's like, they're Timbits. And I was just like, what? Like, just a kid just felt like, I want to draw Timbits. Yeah. And I think they had arms and legs, and I thought, wow, like the freedom that my little cousin had, I was like, oh my gosh. And it really felt like two different artists just like having a subconscious dialogue with me. I was like, I see this person that's taking himself maybe too seriously, and this person that's just enjoying himself and like doing whatever he wants and laughing and just like creating and just for the fun of it. And I was like, that really kind of like touched me, and like it brought me back to like what it's like being a kid, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously our different personalities, but like obviously he's more of the joker, but
he's more free.
Yeah, he's more free, you know, like, and so that really inspired me as an artist. I was like, you know, I need to enjoy myself. I don't need to take it too seriously, you know, and just create. And when I felt like I was enjoying myself, I felt free. I felt like mistakes, they're not mistakes. I just keep going and like work with them, and that's really how that went.
That's really how to say. That's really inspiring what you've been saying, because what you've been explaining is like the children, like they are free from let's say the carcans of the society, and so they teach you something or reteach you something that maybe you lost, and I think we lost once in a while, all of us, And that's why it's really important sometimes to connect with children, because they remind us that. And I think it was important. I think for you, it was really helping for you, and maybe for the work you've been doing. So that's nice. And thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
About other inspiration, I would like to like you talk about your inspiration. You've been talking about your cousin, but you have other artists that inspiring your work.
I feel like since I've always been working with acrylic, when I went to the museum, I felt like Kent Monkman had really touched my soul because his work was so colorful and creative, and especially his mischief character, or mischief. and I always thought it was so interesting. I thought, like, I saw an artist that was going beyond, the limits, and so I felt like he inspired me in a way. But as I was continuing in my artistic practice, there was one particular artist. Okay, the story is actually, it was like Black History Month, and this teacher forced the 2 Black students in the class to do a presentation on a Black artist.
Okay.
And so yes, we were forced. We had no choice. It's okay.
Okay.
It's part of destiny, because that's when I discovered this artist here in Montreal, Malicious. And that's when I kind of looked her up, and I found her, and I really fell in love with her work and her murals of black people, and they were so colorful. And I just, looking at her work, it made me feel safe. It made me feel like, okay, I feel comfortable in painting myself, because obviously when you're Black or when you're a person of color and you paint people that look like you, people will ask, why don't you paint white people? But they don't ask that to white people, I've been asked that, and it's just like, but I'm Black, I'm painting Black, And so even just in general, sometimes you don't see yourself in other white artists' work when they're surrounded by, multiculturalism, And so that was also another artist that inspired me, and obviously Carrie James Marshall, for obvious reasons. I just loved the way he painted Black people. They were so, obviously he painted them actually Black, but I had never seen something in a way so beautiful and delicate, and like they also, like, his characters really felt like people, and so that's another artist that I felt really inspired me. I feel like they had kind of like brought me to who I am in the sense of the comfort in my work, and I feel like they were important in my artistic practice. But a big inspiration is just simply nature. Because back then I used to often go to the park. I don't as often because I don't live near a park anymore. But when I did, I used to go often and just like walk around and stay there and just for hours. And so I still really love flowers and everything. And every time I saw one grow, my grandma would always tell me, like, look, there's a new flower in the backyard, and I would just stare at it. And so I always loved nature. Except insects, but they're part of nature. They're part of nature. But yeah, I just love I just love the flowers and all that. And so that really inspired me. But also, it became really important because like grass and nature just brings it back to like body hair, and how that's also part of our bodily environment. Because it grows, comes out of our skin naturally.
Protect.
Yeah, exactly. And so protection. Exactly. So that's why that's also a big inspiration.
But there's a notion of resilience in nature that's really important to take, like to think about, because, like, let's say what is like could be annoying with the society. There's the constant attack with when you don't fit with what is the image from the society. So you have, like they say, nature to inspire you and to calm you. Like I think for me too, like I love to walk and to have this presence of the nature. I don't know, chlorophyll. It's just like helping a lot, and you feel better. So like for sure, I agree totally with you. About the inspiration you've been talking about, what I can see is like the notion of. It's not just beautiful work they're doing. They are delivering a message, and I know that you have a message too. So we go slightly to the third part like that. And so I wanted to know like how you begin as an artist to think that with your heart, with your art, not with your heart, but maybe two together. To say with your production, you'll be delivering a message. How it happened actually.
Yeah. Um, I've always been like a person that's very hairy, and so having to like just being forced to like shave, wax, and all those procedures that are painful as well. And so going through that and going through all that pain, a part of me was sometimes telling a story through my work, and kind of like it would just happen automatically. I would paint whatever, but then I would feel kind of like this force inside of me that wants to paint what I'm going through. And so it would happen where, like in particular, there was a painting, if was Belle, where I kind of have this painting where a flower kind of like painfully coming out of my back. But at the time I was so timid and I couldn't express the pain I was going through. And so why do I feel like I'm gonna cry or something? I'm not trying to cry. No, but yeah, so through that's when I guess that was in like in college when I first made that painting, and then it would happen again when I got to university to feel like a force really telling me like I have to talk about the pain I'm going through. And so but after that, when I felt like I was ready, and when I felt like I started questioning myself and questioning like why was I doing all of that, who was I doing all of that for? And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, it's society. I was just born into it. We're forced to do that. And just realizing how beauty standards change over time, and how we're kind of like, as women or people, we're caught in like a loop, and we're just always changing, and no one's like screaming or reacting like, hey, we could stop, we could get out of that loop. And so for me, I guess through like working on myself a lot, and I was able to kind of like slowly get out of that loop, but through art, of course, because that was the only medium I knew how to like express myself in. And so that's when I kind of went into self photography. Because before I was modeling, and I obviously like to take selfies at the time. I don't even take as many pictures anymore, but mostly for like just my Instagram and for my activism. But yeah, and so in 2019, I created the Lavender Project, which was a self-photography project, and I also call it self-liberating, where I kind of like showed my chest hair for the first time. I made this a purple dress, and I showed it off. The dress had like two sides, one that like hid my chest and like the chest hair, and another side where it revealed it. And because I remember in that moment I wasn't sure if I was actually ready, and so I decided to wear the side where that revealed my chest hair. And so I put that on Instagram, and that's where it kind of all started. I got like different kind of like opinions, and people also trying to like question themselves, like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. Why like on a man I'm not like shocked or disgusted, but like on a woman it's like outrageous. And so you kind of have to like think about all these elements and why you feel that way about your own body. Why are you like disgusted, and so for me that was like something that was that kind of like after the Lavender Project, I knew that in my work I needed to continue normalizing female body hair. Like I wasn't a body hair activist. I was just people are like, oh, you're a feminist, you're a body activist. Like, they just thought I just did that for a trend, but I was just doing that because I wanted to, like, set myself free, And so that's when I started, someone gave me the label of body hair activist, and I didn't even know that was a thing. Yeah, so then I accepted the title. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll actively be doing that because it is really important. I didn't know at the time. I just thought, I just want to live. Because I felt like I was in a dark place and I was tired of being in that place. And so when I made that decision, I knew that I had to bring that same message in my work, in my paintings, because I understood the power of photography, and it's the same power that it had negatively on us people, like seeing obviously thin white women, blonde hair, something like that, with no body hair. Like these images, they let us know what's beautiful and what's not, and if we're not seen, we're by default we think that we're ugly. And so that became really, really important, and I knew that I was going to bring that in my work, and I wanted people to see themselves, especially because a lot of people don't realize that many women are hairy, but we're just all removing it, you know. And I remember I had a little conversation with like a group of friends, and she was like, "Yeah, I removed my facial hair," and I was like, "You have facial hair, you know?" You know, like we don't know all that stuff because we don't really talk about it. It's like a secret. It's something we're like afraid to talk about, and so that's why I kind of brought it into my work. I was like, I know that. If photography can destroy people from the inside, it could also heal. And so I knew that through my photography work, but I also thought, you know, I don't see that in the museum or galleries, so I'm going to bring it.
Yeah. Don't see that yet.
So I'm going to bring that as well, that aspect. And so I think that painting brings a different element, the texture, and just it's just like just the imagination and all that. And I think that it became really important to bring it in painting as well, because that's also a form of representation, to see yourself in an art space. And so that was another thing. And so, but I also wanted them to just live just how I wanted to be. So, you know, and that's why I made sure that they're just going through life, you know, and it's not necessarily just about the fact that they're hairy, but they're just going about their day, and I'm just capturing a moment. And that's how I feel. Like I also feel like when I'm painting, it's like I'm capturing a moment, and I'm just painting it and showing like when it's like happening. But so that's why I felt like it was important. And there's still a lot of work to do.
That's for sure.
But it's like a beginning for me, and you know, I as a person, obviously my artistic practice like expanded. You know, at first I wasn't sure about including like photography as well. I encouraged you for that. I was like, go for that. Because it was like very separate to me. Like the photography felt more like I wanted to do that for myself, but also for the women and the people that need that liberation. And then she kind of told me, like, no, you need to bring it together. You need to do that. And I was like, you know, I didn't feel ready. And once I listened to her, yeah, that's when I kind of created a project, and I kind of brought it together, and it really started to make sense. And so, like, really in life, you just need people, friends that really have a vision as well when it comes to your work, and that they could see further. Because sometimes we're too much in our own bubble, but other people have great ideas.
I'm happy to help. But about that, there's friends can help out, but there's also great author that can help out. And for the project, there was a book that was very helping for me for the curatorial reflection, and it's called "The Body Is Not an Apology." It's written by Sonia Renee Taylor. I think really recently, maybe 2019, 2020, and it's really related. What you've been saying like before is really in relation to what she called body terrorism. You know, all this kind of injunction that the society telling us you should not be hairy, you should not be fat. Yeah, I'm fat, for example. So, like the notion, what you've been saying in your work resonated in me for another subject, and so I think it was very. Helping me to think about, okay, what is the society is telling me, like maybe like, I should not take too much space, but well, I take the space, so well, I will do with it, 5 minutes left. And so I think it was very inspiring because in the book too, there's a notion of radical self-love. And so let's say in your project, you're showing your own journey about that and how you connected with your history, with like way tribal, but with your creation on your own, and with your journey, because actually, to explain very quickly, the exhibition is separated in 3 steps. So there is like, we are actually in the mythology part right now. And so we are really in connection with the Fetisute tribe here. But next here is like more the ideal standard, the ideal paradise, when you actually kind of break a little bit the standard we live in and say, yeah, you have to be this certain type of body, this certain type of body. And so let's say it's like the seed of change, let's say. And the last part is really like a kind of reflection of your own journey and saying, okay, like let's open the door, like the cage we can see on Chaos Imperfection. Like for me, that was my favorite, by the way. It's like really like this connection with the ancestor, like from above, like liberating you, helping you, like your aunt, thank you to her too, by the way, like opening the door of the cage, and after like questioning work, like for the one, I forgot the name of this word.
The one beside it?
Yeah.
It's identity.
Identity. Like when actually she like the characters like is like suffering, like strangling hair, like it's like suffering for being beautiful, and you're like, okay, fuck that, sorry, but fuck that. So it's really this notion of liberation for yourself, but in the same time you're giving a model, like a reflection for myself. Like I was the curator, but I've been thinking a lot to myself, so that was really helping. And so it's really connected to the book, because she so Renee Taylor is talking about, okay, making the change for yourself, but also to the community. And so I was very happy to be part of this project, because you've been doing that very perfectly well. And so as I was saying for somebody else, I said, yeah, when she will be like a big museum, I was like, yeah, I know her, presented first on the show. So I'm just like, yeah, a lot of happy time, and yeah, proud. So yeah, the notion of sisterhood and trying to do the circle before the time is done. So yeah, so I'm
But
very
also
happy
like
of
the
that.
aspect of like diversity,
Yeah.
right? Bodily diversity as well, like especially when it comes to like body hair, just like over time I kind of learned to understand that like even people from different parts of the world are hairier than others, and that's also part of like our differences, and that's something that we don't really necessarily talk about. And so like even like different types of beauty standards, like when I went to Haiti, like some women weren't shaving their armpits and it wasn't seen as shameful, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, yay. And that was at the time when I wasn't like, you know, I hadn't fully like decided to like stop shaving, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect, I'm gonna start shaving my armpits, like no one's gonna judge me, I'm not gonna feel shame. And that's why I feel like normalization is really important, because you kind of remove that shame, you kind of like show people that there are people that look like this, and and even if it's you to feel comfortable and to not feel ashamed, because it's a horrible feeling to be ashamed of your own, the body you live in, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing as well.
Yeah, that's very good. And like, let's say we are in relationship with your body. You are with your body until the end. So it's better to have the journey, good journey with it, you know. So for sure, like you live for yourself. So I think it's very important, like you remember that with your project too. So it's a good learning. I think people will go like they will have a good moment, but sometimes good reflection after. So I think it's very, very important. Voila. So I don't know if we are kind of done for the time. 2 minutes?
Oh.
Well, maybe we can say if you have questions, we have 2 minutes in advance. I hope you had a good time with us. And so, yeah, if you have questions, don't hesitate. This is the moment. No questions? Or comments?
Some of them haven't like looked around yet, so they don't have questions.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Do you have questions to?
No, she has. Yes.
Yeah.
I have more questions because I have 2 minutes. But I was just wondering when you talked about, so like, first of all, I really like this dreamy, like you said, all this grass and the blue. I really like this dreamy setting. And when you said, when people come in, like you said, it's really joyful and it's very light, it's colorful. And I wonder if there are some maybe pains in your paintings, but that they're presented in a colorful and light-weighted manner. So that was a question.
If there's pain?
If there's pain.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, there is. There's I'm looking at which one. Okay.
Identity,
but identity,
for sure.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
But also chaos and perfection. And my white Barbie. This one is a very personal one, but I don't mind talking about it. But my white Barbie was really something that I kind of realized when it came to me developing who I am today. And obviously it's continuous, but obviously as a Black person, I wasn't seeing enough of myself. on screen, but my parents made sure to buy me black Barbies. But I also had white Barbies. Like, I had a lot of black Barbies, but I also had white Barbies. And it's just that this picture where it's kind of like me holding this white Barbie, it's kind of like, you know, I wasn't seeing the black girls as, you know, the love interest and all that, you know, and so and I didn't even know how much that had impacted me so terribly, to the point that growing up, I remember, like, when I'm watching TV, I'm like, oh, I want to be the blonde girl. She's the one all the guys want, you know? And it's like, oh, automatically in my head, I was like, that's me, you know? Even though we looked nothing alike.
Yeah.
And so, and it's when, like, I got to high school, I remember we had a little project, like, in my visual arts program, and we kind of had to kind of draw a magazine cover. And when I was a kid, I thought, like, when I'm gonna be famous, my name is gonna be Christella Malone. Till this day, I have no idea why.
From where?
I don't know. And I kind of, like, in that that magazine cover, I had drawn this white girl with, like, short blonde hair, and in my head it said, that's me. And it was like, what? That's weird. And I kind of, like, didn't understand that until, like, I got older, and I was like, wait, I remember that moment when I was a kid, and I said, that's me, you know? And so kind of, like, seeing more representation, I can, like, identify more with characters that look like me, and that just the importance of that, because then you feel like you want to look like someone that you're not, you know? And it's the same thing for, like, social media, when we're taught, like, that social media is toxic, you know, it's a toxic space. But I try to remind people that we have a choice. You could follow people that look like you, you know. There's so many people on you know, on social media, and you could choose who you want to follow. You could choose the people that you want to let inspire you, you know. And so that's really a moment that I want to capture. Like, even, like, when I was playing Mario Kart, I was always Peach, you know. In the Mario universe, there's no black characters, and so I was, like, always Peach. I was like, oh, that's me. And especially that I like pink, so all that stuff. But yeah, so that's where this particular piece comes from. And with identity, it was really, like, the extent to how far you're willing to go to, like, change yourself to fit this image, or even, like, just your breaking point when you start just, like, completely removing your hair because you don't even know who you are anymore. And so, and in Chaos and Perfection, it's more about wanting to control aspects of your life, but also there's a spiritual aspect that we don't see with our own eyes, but that's there, and that's impacting our lives every day. And so that's what I also wanted to bring in the work. It's kind of like, some people have told me it looks like a stage, or, you know, and it's really that. It's kind of like a stage with curtains, and it's like the people from the outside putting it together and, like, trying to control you, or you wanting things to be perfect, but they're not. Like, and that also kind of almost came by accident, because there's a part of the painting at the very bottom with the heel, where it's like I just wanted to paint a heel, and someone's putting their foot in there, and I realized, oh, that's the wrong way. You can't put your foot in there like this. It doesn't make sense. And I was like, okay, that's just perfect. It goes perfectly with that. There's just so many things going on. You want your life to be perfect. Things are happening around you that you're not aware of. And then and it's not perfect, you know, and it's just, that's part of the journey. That's what that one was about.
Is there any other questions or comments?
Lots of comments. Very, I think I'm gonna have to, like, digest a little bit, but yeah, it's very great to have the discussion at how, just at which point, like, so many of the things, that so many of the, obviously, between society, and it impacts each one differently, whether or not we fit the image of what's being placed, but and it's our whole system does not fit most people. And to become conscious of how toxic it is and how much trauma has been instilled in so many people, especially people who've been racialized. And it's crazy, like this, when you're talking about the Barbie, but in my head, I get what you're saying, but in my head it's like, wait a second, we've been told we can't identify, because when you're a kid, you're gonna identify, like change the image. If it's like a cartoon about animals, we're gonna identify with any animal we want to.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden, because it's a skin color we can't identify with, if it's not responding to our own thing, and just like how violent that is, and how much the mediatization, but the socialization has made people of all kinds who feel different feel so isolated and so much like they can't be a part of society or fit in, and how much that enslaves like everybody is all coming out. And I love how you just embrace this in a very empowering way, in a very like, I'm gonna love and accept myself first, which is I think that's the most beautiful path to fight that, and it's really wonderful and inspiring and beautiful paintings and such a strong message, and thank you.
Thank you.
And to you too.
Thanks.
I have a question. Esther, I'm super curious to hear you talk about like the importance of designing your own clothes and like the role that clothing plays in like realizing this like imaginary world.
Yeah, so when it comes to, I guess, the fashion aspect, since I was modeling and I was like doing a lot of fashion shows, but like when I was a kid, like, well, actually, my grandparents used to sew. Well, they still kind of do sometimes, but like my mom used to sew, and so I felt like that was like in my blood. I always felt like I wanted to sew at some point in my life. But it really came when I took a fibers class at Concordia, and I kind of learned how to sew again, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I want to do this. And I bought my own sewing machine and everything, and I started doing that. But for me, we didn't even talk about purpose and stuff, but we forgot to talk about that. But like, for me, I like to do things with a purpose, because I feel like when I just do something, I don't feel anything. Like when I paint, I need to feel something. Like if I just feel like I'm gonna paint an apple, I feel frustrated. So I really have to feel connected to the work emotionally. And so I wanted to create like this fabric, like, and just paint on it and like just experiment. I want to see how far I could go with it and what I could do with it. And I'm just a beginner, so I was trying different things. And that also became important when it comes to like clothing, because it's also part. I always believe that it's part of your personality and part of like you could dress however you want, and it's really part of who you are, and that's also what I bring into the characters that I painted. I want to like, individuality is really important. I want them to all dress differently, have different hairstyles, because they're each person is a different person. And so kind of like bringing the fashion aspect became really important, because it kind of like brings it into the real world, but like also gives it a personality. Especially in this project, it was really about different stages, like ideal self, and like I really wanted to talk about our ideals, and I want to question like where they come from and why we feel certain ways. And so like especially like the blue one, it's really about like how you feel when you're around other people, and that's ideal reflection. And so this particular photograph, it's really to kind of go back to high school and how I used to feel in the past. And it's kind of insecure, feeling like isolated. And so I kind of like wanted to bring that, but also she has a personality. She kind of knows who she is, but she doesn't know how to express it. And so she's kind of like just there looking away, and and so yeah, so that's why I felt like I wanted to bring that, to kind of like the kind of like with the long arms, like the long fabric where the arms are supposed to be, where they are. It kind of like it's kind of like pulling you down. It's still creative, but it's pulling you down, and you kind of feel empty in a sense. And so that's kind of like.
Is that
And
feeling
obviously
strange?
yeah, and also like just blue being also symbolizing feeling sad in a sense, but also blue could be happy. But in that particular work, it was kind of like I'm not even looking at anyone. I'm just looking away, and I'm just stuck in my own head, and that's where I feel like that became really important. And to just bring the characters to life and to try to talk about something through fashion. Yes.
I have another question too. Something I've noticed is there's such an aliveness to all the plants and the flowers and the nature and the hair too is like alive like the plants, and it has a very different like sense of, and the bodies all feel like really like much more in a different space. And is that conscious? Is that for reason? Is that?
Oh, can you elaborate on that? Because I'm not sure if I understand.
It feels like those even though when you look at like a lot of your faces are very expressive and going through things, but the bodies themselves, like the way they're painted, is very smooth and calm. And then you've got like hair, and then you've got like all the plants are very like they're almost speaking louder visually. Which is kind of
I'm trying to think now. That's a good question.
Because you were talking about how much you love the parks and the plants, and I'm just wondering whether there was. I mean, sometimes it's like that. You have a relationship with something, and that vibrancy that you're feeling is just coming out in the painting, and sometimes it's something that you're doing on purpose because of X, Y, Z, and I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I feel like when I paint bodies, it's kind of like I want it to look a certain way, but also like. It's kind of like a certain focus that I get into, and I want to really make sure that we see the body hair and that they're in the places that I want them to be in the particular paintings. But yes, probably like this one, like how the grass is made. I just start making lines. Like I kind of have an idea. I'm like, we all know what grass is like. Just make lines, And it's just like I just allow myself to go a little crazy when it comes to like nature, because it's like. I feel like when you could paint nature, you could almost paint it in an abstract way. We understand when we're looking at it, but I feel like my characters, I want people to really read it how it is, and that's why I feel like it's this more solid in a sense, and we see a lot of more details in that. But sometimes there's details in others. But I feel like in this painting. Secrets, where like the nature is kind of like in a relationship in a sense with the body, and that's really what I thought was important, because I always like to bring back body hair with nature, like how it grows naturally, how we're removing like weeds, we're taught to remove them, we don't, like most of us didn't know why, we just have to remove them, and and now we know how it's important for bees, and it's just like
it almost seems like the painting is really about the plant, and the body is like just there to make the plant more alive.
Yeah, that was actually a plant that I saw when I went to Haiti. It's called Crown of Thorns, if I'm correct, or like Crown of Christ as well, something like that. Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, oh, that's weird. So
there's the thorns?
The thorns. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, like when I think of thorns, I think of roses, because roses are very beautiful, but there's thorns there. That's like kind of dangerous, but like also like the body hair. I'm not trying to say like it's dangerous body hair, but like they're kind of like soft thorns that they're just on your body and kind of like are just part of you. You as a person are beautiful, but you also have these thorns that make you also unique. And so that's also these aspects. But I think that plant in particular was like really, really specific. I just, like I said, I like flowers. And when I saw that plant when I went to Haiti, I was like, ooh, I really like this. I'm going to paint it one day. And then it happened.
But what I can see is really interesting that because there's the body and the nature, but maybe there's this connection that is a little bit more blurry. That maybe that could be very interesting for you, like to see because. As you've been saying, there's the body that is more like calmer, but maybe the nature is like maybe taking over. But maybe there's an association that is more blurry. So maybe that's why it's so maybe intriguing, you know. So there is a notion of and not yes and. So there's this, I don't know if I'm clear, but there is this notion of everything is together actually. It's like this one I've been seeing while you've been discussing about that, and when you see like the nature but turning into hands, and let's say like the waterfall, yeah, that was looking for the word, it's like a bowl, but then sometimes you understand it's a waterfall, so there's a notion of body and nature going together, so there's a merge that it will be interesting to notice, so that's all are together.
But yeah, in this particular work, the anointed fiete, it's kind of like when the chief, loud noise, when she's chosen as a chief, and so she's being anointed near the river, and they're pouring water on her, and obviously my characters often don't have shoes and it's kind of like brings it back to like just walking on nature. It's a weird feeling, like I hadn't done that in forever, and so when you kind of like feel your feet in the grass, it's such a,
you grounded.
Yeah, exactly. And so like that feeling of like humility and kind of like connecting with nature itself, that I feel like is really important as well, and that's why nature is present and they're not wearing shoes, they're really walking on it. And so yeah, that as well.
I think it's like fighting too, you know, the notion, because, you know, society is like this kind of disconnection with nature, so by fighting back you actually really reconnect in that way, so that's very interesting, you taking that. And there's a lot of action outside, so I don't know what's going on. I hope it's okay though. Anyway. So, is that another question? Okay. So maybe this is it?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you have a good moment.